The bat made a sound I still can't forget, a wet thud against ribs, then the porch rail humming like a tuning fork. Pine pitch and summer rain hung in the air. Dust motes jittered in a blade of afternoon sun that had the nerve to be pretty. I tasted copper and paint. The old flag over the steps snapped once and held its crease like it was supervising. "Sell the house," my father said, knuckles white on the taped handle. "Melissa needs it." His breath smelled like anger gone stale. My spine found the porch post. My grandmother's letters, rubber-banded and soft with years, spilled from my hoodie pocket across the floorboards like birds flushed from brush. One page turned on a draft and caught my eye. Her thin blue script, steady as a metronome. "Stand where your truth stands, Naomi. Not where their fear pushes." The second swing clipped the porch swing chain and sent it shrieking. I got my forearm up and felt the crack through bone, then through something older. The deed, Grandma's deed, sat on the hall table behind me, a rectangle of law that smelled like old paper and lemon polish. I had mopped that floor at dawn because that's how you talk to a house you mean to keep. "Dad," I said, voice a tight cable. "Stop." "Don't you order me," he snapped. And the bat came again. Low, mean. The porch step took it. Dented, remembered. Our neighbor, Mrs. Gordon, shouted from her gate. Mr. Whitaker's screen door banged. Tires hissed on wet pavement somewhere beyond the azaleas. The world kept offering witnesses. He kept not caring. Mom's voice floated from the path like an apology. "Harold, please, she's being difficult." I laughed once because breathing hurt the other way. "I'm being robbed," I said, and tasted blood for my trouble. The bat lifted. Sirens lifted louder. Blue washed the porch. Shore Patrol and local PD arriving in the same breath. Boots on gravel. Radios barking that clipped music I'd lived by for half my life. Officer Ellison's voice landed first, all salt and certainty. "Drop it, sir." Dad hesitated, pride twitching like a bad habit, then tightened his grip. The bat rose a fraction. I stepped sideways and put my body between him and the letters because that's where the war actually was. "Naomi," Mom's hands fluttered uselessly at air. "Just give him the papers. Your sister has creditors," I said, "and I have a will." Ellison moved in with two others, presents turned up, hands not yet. "Sir," he said, "don't add felonies to regret." The bat wavered. My grandmother's porch smelled like old varnish and rain. I heard the swing creak, a tired animal asking for new weight, the way houses do when they're deciding whether to keep you. Across the street, someone killed a mower. An entire block leaned on its elbows. He turned on me, years of rank and thunder condensed into one last attempt. "You'll do as I say." I straightened as much as cracked ribs allow. The uniform under my hoodie felt like a second skeleton. Muscle memory pulled my shoulders back. "I haven't for 9 years," I said, soft enough to be heard. "That's why this house still has a heartbeat." He lunged. 2 officers took his arms clean, no theater. The bat clattered across the board, spun, and stopped against the threshold like a bad coin finally done rolling. Ellison stepped to me, eyes flicking from the letters on the floor to the bruises blooming under my sleeve. "Ma'am," he said, recognizing rank without needing it explained. "Captain Hart," I said, because names matter when your blood's in your mouth. His gaze softened an inch. "We've got him." Neighbors clustered at the property line, faces pinched into that shape people make when a secret gets dragged out into ordinary light. Mom reached for me, and then for the letters, fingers shaking. I bent. Pain cracked down my side like lightning and gathered Grandma's words with one hand. "Don't arrest him," I heard myself say, stupid and true. "Document everything. I want restitution. I want a restraining order, that's all." Ellison studied me like he knew the cost of that sentence. "Understood." Dad sputtered something about family and duty while the cuffs clicked a quiet, declarative sound. The porch swing moved an inch inside. Mrs. Gordon crossed herself. Mr. Whitaker took off his cap. Somebody behind the hydrangeas muttered, "Captain?" with equal parts surprise and correction, like the neighborhood had just learned my first name all over again. I pressed a palm to the dent in the rail and felt splinters catch my skin. Small, honest stings. The flag above me didn't move. It didn't need to. It had its crease and its post, and a sky that would outlast our noise. Ma'am, Ellison said, gentler now. EMS is here. I've had worse, I lied. The stretcher squeaked. The gauze smelled like clean cotton in the past. I tucked the letters back inside my hoodie, right over the rib that hurt the most. Mercy isn't surrender, it's a boundary with a steady pulse. As they wheeled me through the doorway, I caught a glimpse of the hall. The deed on the table, Grandma's black and white photo at the end of the runner, her porch swing throwing a slice of afternoon onto the wall like a blessing. In the corner of the frame, my reflection passed, a tired woman with a split lip and a spine that knew its work. Captain? Ellison asked, walking beside the gurney. Anything you want to say for the report? I looked past him to Dad in the cruiser, profile suddenly small against the cage, and Mom on the steps, hands empty, crying like quiet rain. I thought of Melissa's texts, full of pleas and zero plan, the sabotaged mailbox, the bricks tossed at midnight, the porch light I kept replacing because I refused to let darkness feel entitled. Yeah, I said, put this in. He clicked his pen up. Some debts aren't money, I said, they're healed or left behind. 9 years earlier, the porch smelled like lemon oil and summer dust, and my father's voice made the screen rattle. If you walk into that recruiter's office, don't walk back here. The flag over the steps barely stirred. Grandma squeezed my hand behind the rail, paper-thin skin warm and steady. I left with a duffel that still had department store creases and a spine I was learning to own. The first months in uniform tasted like metal canteens and chow line salt. Sleep arrived in short, useful rations. I learned the mathematics of calm. Checklist, breath, repeat. The Navy taught me to listen to turbines and people the same way. Catch the first wrong note. Fix it before it grows teeth. Home taught me something else. Family business or no business, Dad wrote once in a postcard with a lighthouse on it and no return address. Mom called it holidays to arrange truce weather. Melissa, my sister, texted in fragments when money ran thin and boyfriends ran thinner. Grandma mailed letters, real ones, weekly. Her blue script wandered the page like a careful creek. Proud of your grit. Don't give fear an office. The porch misses your boots. The flag holds its crease. She tucked in clippings, a pressed camellia, sometimes a $10 bill with a note that said, ice cream, not rent. I kept every page in a rubber-banded stack that got soft at the edges from rereading. When deployments stacked, Afghanistan's dust, Bahrain's salt air, Djibouti's heat like a hand, I wrote back in pencil on Navy stationery that smelled faintly of the storeroom. I'm good. Hydrated, following orders. The boat still jokes. I never sent the pages where I said I loved the sea because it didn't try to make me smaller. I saved those for the letters I didn't mail, folded into the same rubber band because love belongs with truth, even when you hoard it. Grandma refused to let her porch become a museum. She kept the swing oiled, the steps repainted, the mailbox replaced after Dad accidentally backed over it twice. She answered neighbors with pie and silence. When I could take leave that she left the porch light on like a lighthouse with a personal grudge. We'd sit with sweet tea sweating on the rail and the cicadas tuning up. Your father only knows one kind of order, she'd say, not unkind. It's loud, yours is quiet, keep yours. The house had its own discipline. Boards that creaked in warning, windows that stuck in July, a front room that smelled like old books and Murphy's oil soap. In the hall, a copy of the deed hung behind glass like a family photo. Grandpa's name first, then Grandma's, and a line for whoever would actually listen to the place. On Sundays, she polished the frame with the same cloth she used on the banister, small circles that turned dull back into shine. Mom tried to be a bridge that never finished. He doesn't mean it, she'd say, voice thinned by practice. He's just proud. Pride to her was weather, not choice. Melissa called pride permission. She lived like the rules were a rumor, missed payments like they were appointments she'd been wise to dodge, and arrived on holidays with stories that asked you to admire their audacity and ignore their victims. When Grandma's heart began to skip, her letters shortened but sharpened. Don't come if orders say stay. I want you alive when the porch is quiet. Then call the lawyer. File the thing. Don't flinch when they do. The last envelope arrived with a faint lavender smell and a post-it on top. Open after. The word felt like a cliff. After came on a Tuesday, gray and obedient. The house breathed a different air. The flag on the porch did not half staff. It held its crease like a vow. The will named me for the house, and the small savings account she'd guarded like a candle cupped in wind. There was a letter, thicker than usual, folded in thirds and brittle with intention. You keep what you maintain. This roof, this story, your peace. They abandoned you because they feared your spine. Do not rent your spine to their fear. Love them without giving them the deed. I read it sitting on the step with the swing bumping my shoulder, the chain making that soft, old metal sigh. The mailbox thunked with a casserole from Mrs. Gordon and a sympathy card from someone who didn't sign it. The porch light clicked on against the afternoon as if it knew the day was going to be long. They came back like a weather front. Dad at the door with a jaw set for victory and a palm out, Melissa behind him in sunglasses big enough to hide choices, Mom folding her hands the way people do in waiting rooms. She meant the family, Dad said, already inside with his eyes. You'll liquidate. Melissa is drowning. The swing kept creaking. The will means what it says, I answered, showing the deed in the lawyer's cover letter with its sharp, rectangular tone. I'll keep the house. I'll help how I can. I won't sell. They tried volume, then sentiment, then story. Your grandmother didn't understand probate, Mom murmured, as if the woman who balanced a checkbook to the penny had ever misplaced a comma. You always were selfish, Melissa said, rubbing her temple. Dad stepped onto the floorboards like they owed him weight and called my career a uniformed tantrum. What followed wasn't a month. It was a campaign. The mailbox dented again, the porch bricks scattered. A midnight knock followed by giggles that didn't belong to children. My letters, the stack Grandma had saved, were stolen from the hall table and tossed back a week later, damp and wrinkled, like someone had tried to launder history and failed. I dried each page with the low heat of the oven and a prayer that wasn't about God so much as heat transfer. The ink didn't run. Her words held. The city sent a confirmation with a seal. Transfer complete. The court sent another. Will probated. Airtight. The attorney called and said, "You're good," in a tone that knew we weren't. Neighbors left pound cakes and neutrality. Mr. Whitaker fixed the porch step without being asked. I replaced the porch light again and again because darkness loves free real estate. Every reunion was a test I'd already passed. This is your last chance, Dad said on the walkway, voice low. Be useful. I am, I said, looking past him to the azaleas that needed deadheading. Just not to your story. Melissa will die, he hissed, because fear is a tool. She'll live, I said, because truth is also one. She'll also learn. I patched what I could. Hole in the soffit, cracked pane, the swing's elbow where the chain meets the wood. I left some scars visible. Not trophies. Lessons. My uniform hung in the hall like a witness that didn't need to speak. When I sat on the step, I tucked Grandma's letters under my palm. The paper felt like a pulse. By August, the heat made everyone meaner. The porch boards exhaled sap. The swing sang a quieter song. The flag snapped once and went still, a decision more than a breeze. I was sweeping pine needles off the step when the bat came down and replaced every old story with one that refused to be misread. The lawyer's office smelled like paper dust and stale coffee. A brass lamp warmed the edge of the deed until the ink looked alive. He slid the envelope across, seal raised, signature blue and stubborn. Airtight, he said. House and savings to you. Outside, the wind slapped the flag on the courthouse pole once and quit. I folded the deed into a rigid square and walked it home like it might wobble if I looked away. They were waiting on the walk, Dad with his jaw locked, Mom folded at the elbows, Melissa in sunglasses too big for a cloudy day. The porch boards gave that familiar creak, a warning I'd learned to trust. Dad spoke first. She meant the family. She wrote my name, I said, twice. Sell the house, Melissa said, bored and urgent at once. I'm drowning. You can learn to swim, I said. Mom tried mercy as leverage. Your grandmother adored you, she murmured. Honor that by helping. I laid the envelope on the hall table and put my palm flat. I am honoring her. I'm keeping what she kept. Dad stepped onto the bottom stair like rank could climb wood. You'll do as I say? No, I said. Quiet. The boards held, mini-turn. That night the mailbox lay in the ditch, lid bent like a mouth mid-sob. I found tire tracks in the mud and a single brick on the grass. The house smelled like Murphy's oil and rain, clean and sharp. I stood the box up, hammered a new screw through the flag bracket, and readdressed the whole thing to "not yours" in my head. The letters, Grandma's, stayed stacked by the door, rubber bands softened by years. A week later, an envelope came with a lawyer's tone and no soul. Demand equitable distribution. I read it once, then called mine. He laughed without humor. They can demand the moon, he said. It stays up. Dad left a voicemail that sounded like a drill parade. Be useful. I am, I texted back, then turned my phone face down so pride couldn't perform. They tried neighbors next. Mrs. Gordon stood at my gate with a pie and a message. He says you misunderstood, she said, eyes embarrassed for both of us. I took the pie, set it on the rail, and gave her my lawyer's card. I didn't, I said. Messages turned mean. Traitor. Selfish. Your uniform is a costume. The porch light burned out twice. I replaced it twice. Darkness hates the boring discipline of a new bulb. Melissa came alone, mid-afternoon, perfume like a department store pretending to be Grace. We're family, she said. I need you. You need boundaries, I said. She scoffed. You're cold, Naomi. I'm clear, I said, and watched the word land. Mini turn. City Hall stamped the transfer. The clerk slid the form back through the slot. The paper smelled like warm toner. All set, she said. You're the owner. On the way home, a brick skittered across my driveway like a cheap warning. I picked it up, set it on the porch, and left it there to remember who we were dealing with. Mom called at dusk, voice small. He's angry. He's a grown man, I said. He says you abandoned us. You cut me off, I answered. I survived. Silence measured itself on the line. The flag over my steps shifted and settled. She tried again. Melissa's in trouble. Then she can take the couch, I said. Not the deed. Mom cried in the quiet way that used to move me. It still did, but not the way she meant. I want peace, she whispered. Me too, I said. Peace lives in lines. By August, the porch heat smelled like sap and old stories. A citation arrived taped to my door, nuisance complaint, anonymous. Mr. Whitaker wordlessly fixed the rattling rail while I filed the response. They're trying to starve your patience, he said. I've eaten worse, I said. At the next conversation, Dad brought paper, printouts, a fake spreadsheet, a plan with my house already sold and the debt miraculously gone. He stabbed a finger at the numbers. Sign. Then I slid Grandma's letter out and read a line aloud like scripture. Don't rent your spine to their fear. He sneered. You think that woman knew business? She knew truth, I said. Different ledger. He leaned in, breath hot, eyes bright with the thrill of cornering. You owe us. I placed the deed on the rail between us like a yardstick. I owe her. He smiled without teeth. Last chance? It's already passed, I said. He left a chip of brick on the step when he turned. I left it. Some scars teach. That night, I swept pine needles into a slow, stubborn pile and listened to cicadas tune their argument. The flag snapped once. A car idled 2 houses down. The swing's chain squeaked a warning. I told myself I had time, that paperwork beats fury, that men who weaponize pride prefer daylight. I was almost right. The bat showed up next. The house breathed like a patient between fevers. Morning smelled of coffee and Murphy's oil. By noon it was pine sap and hot paint. At night, rain on dust and the low metallic click of the porch light learning to trust its socket again. I swept needles off the steps with the same rhythm I used for pre-flight. Deliberate strokes. No wasted motion. The flag over the rail snapped once at odd hours, as if the wind were practicing. Paper arrived, then more paper. Demand letters in serif fonts that mistook intimidation for law. Anonymous nuisance complaints taped crooked to my door. A new account alert I hadn't created. Closed by lunch because I had learned to treat panic like a button you never push twice. I kept a binder on the kitchen table. Deed, will, probate. Order, city confirmations, each sheet in a plastic sleeve that smelled like a school year that would end well. Mom called with her soft-voiced diplomacy. "Your father is frustrated," she said, the way you'd report weather that bruises. I pinched the bridge of my nose and watched sun crawl across Grandma's letters, the rubber band warm under my thumb. "He's choosing frustrated," I answered. "He could choose boundaries." Mini turn. The mailbox lay in the drainage ditch again. Flag bent, door twisted like a grimace. I could hear Mr. Whitaker's hammer 3 houses down. Each strike thudded like a civic heartbeat. I hauled the box up, felt the cool mud drag my palm, and bolted it back to its post with new screws. Across the street, Melissa idled in Mom's car, sunglasses down, music a low, sulking thump. "You're cruel," she called. "I'm consistent," I said, and the screwdriver bit clean. The Outreach Center faxed me a packet. Protective property tips for service members, edges still warm. I taped one copy inside the hall closet and another inside the lid of Grandma's cedar chest, where her quilts smelled like sun and lavender sachets. "You're turning the place into a bunker," Marcus joked over the phone. "Into a boundary," I said. "Different smell." Dad tried words again. He brought a printout with numbers that didn't add up unless you ignored decimals and ethics. "Sign," he said in the foyer, breath sour with impatience. The floorboard under his heel squeaked. A treasonous little tell. I laid my palm flat on the deed frame on the wall and felt the glass cool under my skin. "No," I said. "We can put Melissa on a budget. We can help her call creditors. We cannot sell this roof to pay for choices." He leaned in until I could count the capillaries in his eyes. "You always were the boy I never had," he hissed, trying to bruise me with a sentence. The porch swing chain ticked once, a tiny, indignant metronome. "Wrong ledger," I said, and walked him out. The porch recorded insults. Overnight, a smear of motor oil appeared on the top step like a lazy thread. I scrubbed it with dish soap and a stiff brush until the suds ran gray and the wood felt like itself again. 2 bricks showed up under the hydrangeas. I stacked them by the rail and left them there like a museum of tactics that didn't work. Mrs. Gordon arrived with bread. "I can testify to decency," she said. "I've seen yours." Ellison, the shore patrol officer from the first incident, walked the sidewalk on his off time like a man who doesn't fully clock out. He stopped at my gate, hand on the picket as if asking the wood for permission. "Paperwork's good," he said, nodding toward the binder on my hall table. "Call if they escalate." "They prefer loud to legal," I said. "Loud leaves prints," he answered, tapping his notebook. Mini turn. Melissa switched tactics to negotiation. She showed up empty-handed and damp-eyed on a Wednesday that smelled like thunder. "Just give me the savings," she said, voice like a bruise you weren't supposed to notice. "Keep the house." "The savings pays the roof when the roof forgets," I said, thumb on the letters. "Eat with me, we'll call 3 creditors tonight." Her face went flat with insult. "You think you're better because you can wear a costume and stand at attention." The flag rattled softly. "Standing is a skill," I said. "You learn it." She left tire squeal in the street and a torn flyer on my walk. Estate sale in a font that wanted to be cheerful. I tore it in half, then half again, the paper fibers rough and honest under my fingers. The city clerk called with professional sunshine. "Ms. Hart, your probate is recorded. All set." The printer in her office clattered faintly through the phone. I pictured carbon copies and board staplers and felt peace shiver up my arms like good rain. Mom arrived with a casserole and a plea. "He's your father," she said on the porch, fingers twisting a dish towel. The casserole smelled like condensed soup and a year that never learned to cook. "He's the man who taught you to ride a bike." "He's also the man who told me not to come home," I said, softer than my ribs felt. "Both can be true. Only one needs my deed." Her eyes flinched. You are hard. I am boundaried, I said. Hardness is what happens to people who never learn boundaries. Night had its habits. Headlights idled at the corner, then bled away. A laugh too late and too loud pinballed off the swing chain. I started sleeping on the couch with the windows cracked for the smell of rain and the creak language of the house. My phone faced down on the coffee table, but alarms set for the kind of crisis I knew how to treat. Fire, break-in, self-betrayal. On a Saturday morning, I found the porch swing hook loosened half a turn. Fresh wrench marks silver in the iron. I tightened it back, torque a precise tug, then added a second strap through the joist because redundancy is not paranoia. It's respect for gravity. As I worked, sweat stung my split knuckles and pine pitch glued my fingers. The Swedish smell made me think of childhood, and then of repairs, which is the adult version. Mini-turn. A letter arrived addressed in Grandma's last, shaky hand, postmarked the day before she died. When fear gets clever, it read, it will wear your father's voice or Melissa's tears. Remember, love is not a payment plan. Keep the house. Keep your peace. Keep your humor, if you can. I laughed out loud, sharp and alive. The sound startled a mourning dove on the rail. Its wings clapped like applause as it left. I called the rehab facility where Dad had been assigned preliminary screenings after an altercation he blamed on a misunderstanding at the VFW. The receptionist sounded tired and kind. He's resisting, she said. But we're good at stubborn. So am I said. Tell him I'm replacing porch screws he loosened. You want me to? No, I said. Just say I'm home. The porch found a rhythm. Sweep, tighten, replace, breathe. I fixed the door latch so it clicked the way a door announces itself when it knows whose house this is. I re-stained the rail where motor oil had tried to live rent-free. I left the bricks on the step. They made a decent doorstop, and I like reassigning bullies. By late August, heat rose from the boards in visible question marks. The flag barely twitched. The air felt thick in a way that makes people choose badly. I wiped sweat with the corner of an old t-shirt and tucked Grandma's letters back against my ribs. That's when the text pinged at 11:47 p.m., a number I didn't recognize and didn't need to. We're done asking. The house hummed in its frame. Somewhere down the block, a muffler rattled. The porch swing chain ticked twice, a nervous metronome. I stood and flicked the light on. The bulb thumped to life, warm, ordinary, casting that oval of safety houses learn to make. I set my binder on the hall table where it could witness. I slid my phone into my back pocket so Ellison's number sat against bone. I put my palm on the rail and felt the grain like an old friend's shoulder. The street went quiet. Too quiet. Night air smelled like wet concrete and the metallic breath before a storm. A car door thunked. One, then another. Footsteps on the walk. Slow. Deciding themselves. The bat came next. I heard it before I saw it, the low, mean whisper of tape on wood against a palm that meant it. The kind of sound you don't mistake after a childhood of little accidents. I breathed once through my ribs and tasted iron. The flag didn't move, it didn't need to. It had its crease. I stepped forward into the light and onto my own porch, where the boards knew my weight and the swing had my back and the letters at my heart were louder than any weapon. The tape-slick whisper of the bat slid up my spine a second before his shadow crossed the porch light. Heat lifted off the boards, pine pitch sweetened the air into something almost kind. I set my feet where the wood knew me, fingers grazing the letters tucked under my hoodie, paper warm against a rib that would soon hate me. Dad stepped into the cone of light, jaw locked, eyes bright with the kind of certainty that makes damage a plan. Last chance, he said. It passed, I answered. He swung low, mean and practiced. The rail took it first, a hollow thud that shook the porch swing chain into a hiss. The second came faster. I got my forearm up and felt a crack march through bone and breath. White noise flooded my ears. The flag over the steps snapped once and folded back into its crease like a supervisor refusing to panic. Sell the house, he shouted, breath sour with pride. Melissa needs it. Then Melissa works for it, I said, words clipped short enough to survive the air. He lunged. I stepped, set, and the bat glanced the post, bounced, and found a new angle. Wood splintered, my side lit. I tasted copper. The letters spilled across the floorboards, blue script turning the light into a map. One page flipped face up. Keep your humor if you can. I almost laughed. Mrs. Gordon's screen door slammed. Mr. Whitaker yelled from his gate. Tires hissed, footsteps quickened. Somewhere a mower died mid-complaint. The neighborhood stood at its own threshold. "Harold!" Mom cried, voice thin and useless. "Please!" He raised the bat again. The sound of sirens tore the block open. Blue washed the hedges, radios yapped, boot soles found gravel, Shore Patrol and PD in an accidental duet. Officer Ellison's voice cut clean. "Drop it, sir." Dad didn't. Pride stiffened his wrists. He darted a look at me, at the deed on the hall table through the open door, at the letters like accusations. He snarled. "She owes us." "No," I said. "I owe her." My palm found the rail dent, splinters biting truth into skin. The bat dipped toward my shoulder, but Ellison came in at an angle I respected. Pure training, no heroics, and hands found wrists before wood found bone. 2 officers pinned him, movement tidy, breath working like a machine. The bat shot free, spun, and slapped the threshold. The porch light hummed, as if pleased by physics. "Ma'am," Ellison said, eyes flicking from my face to the letters, then to the dark blooming under my sleeve. "You hurt?" "I'll be fine," I lied, a good soldier to nobody but myself. My ribs argued, my arm pulsed its opinion. The porch smelled like rain and varnish and old summers. Neighbors clustered to the property line, hands over mouths, phones half raised, then lowered, like they felt the difference between voyeurism and witness. Mr. Whitaker removed his cap. Mrs. Gordon crossed herself with 2 fingers and a tremble. The block didn't clap. The block stood, spine straightened, eyes level, a human crease forming without command. Mom moved toward the letters, hands shaking. "Naomi." "Leave them," I said. And she did, palms hovering in a surrender she hadn't practiced before. Dad wrestled a last sentence from his throat. "Ungrateful." "Alive," I said. Boundaried. Ellison kept his tone level. "Captain?" I met his eyes. "Captain Hart." He nodded once, rank filed without ceremony. "We'll document. Assault, property damage." "Restraining order," I said. "Restitution. No prison." Ellison studied me the way people do when they hear mercy and check for blood. "You sure?" "Mercy isn't surrender," I said, breath thin. "It's control." Mom swayed. "He's sick." "He's stubborn," I said. "He'll get help under a system that measures it." The EMTs jogged up the walk, gurney wheels chirping over a swollen plank. Alcohol pads snapped. Tape lifted. The smell of clean cotton and chlorhexidine took the edge off the porch's history. The medic's fingers were cool and professional. "Broken?" he asked. "Likely," I said. "Hospital," he said. "House," I said, and pointed with my chin. The deed sat on the hall table under the console lamp, law quiet and steady. Grandma's black and white photo watched from the far wall, mouth quirking at a joke that survived her. I slipped the letters back into my hoodie one-handed, paper ticking against bone like small metronomes of the past. Ellison held the storm door with his foot, as if doors were also his job. "I'll ride behind," he said. "We'll keep him separate." Dad sagged when the cuffs clicked, a man meeting gravity after years of pretending to be the weather. He looked smaller in cruiser glass, pride no longer adding inches. He tried one more angle. "Family." "Yes," I said, "and I'm in it. I'm the one who stays." Melissa appeared at the curb, sunglasses catching a flash of blue. She took in the cuffs, the gurney, the letters peeking from my hoodie, and reached for outrage. "This is your fault." "This is his choice," I said. "Your turn to make better ones." Her mouth opened, then closed. The block listened. The flag didn't move. It didn't have to. They wheeled me toward the street. Pain sharpened everything into a manageable list. Breath shallow, arm immobile, ribs loud. The porch boards clicked under the gurney in their old rhythm, a song I knew. At the threshold, I stopped us with a word. Wait! I reached sideways and palmed the bat. Tape tacky, wood warm. I set it upright in the corner by the hall table, base on the scuff it had made, handle against the frame. A memory. A warning. A tool retired. For the record? Ellison asked, pen ready even now. Put this in, I said, and made myself smile at the ridiculous dignity of dictation in blood and lemon oil. Some debts aren't money. They're healed or left behind. He wrote it. The neighborhood breathed once, a collective exhale that didn't ask permission. The porch light threw one last clean oval onto the boards. The gurney bumped down the steps, 1, 2, 3. The flag above me held its crease like a vow I had finally learned how to keep. The ER smelled like chlorhexidine and warm plastic. Monitors ticked their green lullaby. X-rays said 2 ribs cracked, 1 hairline, forearm bruised to a map. Tape tugged my skin. The sling scratched my neck. When the nurse cut the bandage roll, it made that soft shup like pages turning. Officer Ellison stood in the doorway, rain on his shoulders, darkening the fabric. Restraining orders filed, he said, voice the shape of steady. Victim impact statement when you're ready. I'm ready now, I said, pen awkward in my left hand. I wrote what would hold in court and left out what would only bleed on paper. At the bottom, I added Grandma's line for me, not for the judge. Stand where your truth stands. They fitted me with a wrap that hugged pain into a manageable box. The gurney's wheels chirped over thresholds. On the way out, the automatic doors sighed. Night air had that post-storm copper smell, clean over asphalt. Dad went straight from booking to court to rehab. The judge's gavel, a dull wooden heartbeat in a room that smelled like old carpet and new consequence. Probation terms inked themselves into reality. Alcohol counseling, anger management, janitorial duty at the county building 3 mornings a week. When the order landed, the clerk's stamp thumped once. Low. Final. I saw him next at the rehab center. Bleach and coffee in the hallway. A vending machine coughing a stale spiral. He wore county chinos and a jaw that had forgotten how to announce itself. A push broom leaned against the wall. His hands were red from cleanser. He looked at my sling and flinched. You okay? Functional, I said. The broom's bristles clicked on tile like rain when he lifted it. I'm sorry. The word sounded new in his mouth, as if it had been living offshore. I asked for restitution, not revenge, I said. You'll do the work, I'll do the house. He nodded, the motion small, like learning to salute again without an audience. Father Michael met me on my porch 2 days later. His collar shone like a clean coin. The air smelled like wet pine and lemon oil where I'd scrubbed blood from the rail. He set a hand on the dent the bat had left. Keep it? He asked. Yes, I said. The wound had darkened to an honest bruise in the wood. Some scars are instructions. Inside, I set Grandma's letters on the kitchen table like a compass. We read the last 2 aloud. The paper rasped, a soft, papery rain. Love is not a payment plan. Keep the house. Keep your peace. Father Michael listened the way good men do when the task is to bless what already makes sense. Forgiveness, he said, is consent to stop being shaped by their storm. Then I consent, I said, and the word fit like a latch catching. Mini turn. Melissa texted, Can we talk? Alone, no money. We met on the steps at dusk. The cicadas sawed their tired hymn. The flag lifted, then settled like a patient chest. She studied my sling, the dent in the rail, the bat upright in the corner like a retired warning. I didn't know he'd do that, she said. You knew what he could do, I said, not unkind. She swallowed. Perfume tried to hide boiled laundry smell. I'm in a program. I can't fix what I broke, but I can stop breaking things. You can start with truth, I said. You used me as a plan. I'm not a plan. Her shoulders fell. I want to be your sister without borrowing your life. You can sit on the porch, I said. You can't touch the deed. She nodded, eyes wet, accepting the shape of our new map. I repaired the house slowly on purpose. The porch swing got new bolts. The chain still sang its high metallic tink when wind tested it. I left the dent in the rail and the faint scuff where the bat had kissed the threshold. The mailbox stayed bolted to its post with screws that bit true. The flag above it held its crease like it had a spine of its own. Inside, I oiled hinges and marked every fix in a notebook that smelled like pencil and Murphy's. Date, tool, lesson learned. When the wind came hard, the whole frame hummed, a low, reassuring like a ship that knew its waters. Neighbors returned their eyes to their hedges and their hands to their yards. Mr. Whitaker dropped a box of carriage bolts on my step with a sticky note. For gravity. Mrs. Gordon brought soup that tasted like time and patience. Ellison walked by sometimes at twilight, shoes whispering on the sidewalk. He lifted 2 fingers from the brim of his cap, a salute scaled to porch-level life. Mini turn. At rehab, janitorial duty put Dad on his knees with a scrub brush. I found him there once. Pine saw sharp in the air, bristles rasping tile. This is beneath me, he started, and then stopped himself. No, it's mine. He looked up. You were right to call lines. I was right to live inside them, I said. He nodded, then scrubbed, the sound a metronome for humility. The court mailed me papers with a plastic smell, restitution schedule, protective order renewal. I slid them into the binder behind the deed, the sleeves squeaking as air left. Order makes its own weather. Sundays found me sanding splinters from the rail and slicing tomatoes while the house soaked up laughter in a key it hadn't heard in years. A pot roast sent its humid whisper through the rooms. The porch swing clicked and settled under weight that meant friendship, not siege. Melissa came by with peaches and direct sentences. Mom brought a store pie and fewer excuses. Dad didn't cross the line, legally or otherwise, but he sent a note that smelled faintly of bleach. I'm learning. Under it, a check with the first square of restitution, small but signed in the R that hooked like it used to. When I lay down at night, the house clicked and cooled, wood talking itself down. I kept one letter under my pillow like a stubborn child. Keep your humor if you can. I did. I laughed at small victories, the way the porch light flicked on clean, the way the mail slid without sticking, the way my ribs stopped announcing themselves at every joke. On a Tuesday that felt like recovery, I stood in the yard and watched the flag lift on a friendly breeze. The tape residue on my forearm itched. The sling was gone. The bruise had gone to yellow. I pressed my palm to the rail dent and felt only wood, cool and firm. The war had moved out. The work remained, and I liked work. Autumn came in clean and apple cold. The house breathed easier. Floorboards settled without flinching. The porch swing clicked in a friendlier key. I set the bat upright in the hall corner behind the console table. Retired, visible, harmless. The deed lived in its sleeve, cool plastic whispering whenever I checked it like a pulse. On Sundays, the oven fogged the windows and somebody laughed in the kitchen, the smell of thyme and dish soap braided with cedar. Peace sounded like plates being stacked without a plan to weaponize them. I took the letters to Grandma's grave under a sky so blue it felt practiced. Dry leaves made their paper hiss under my boots. Her stone was spare. Name, 2 dates, no adjectives. I laid the stack down, rubber band soft with years, and read the last page aloud because truth prefers air. Forgiveness isn't surrender, it's freedom. Wind lifted the corner and set it back like a nod. I kept the house, I said. I kept my humor. The flag still holds its crease. Pine breath and cold earth filled my lungs. Father Michael's voice sat in the back of my head. Consent to stop being shaped by their storm. I had. Back home, I left the dent in the rail smooth-sanded but unfilled, a pale crescent that taught the porch where not to forget. I rehung the light. The switch clicked like a small vow. Mrs. Gordon brought soup and gossip. Mr. Whitaker fixed a hinge I didn't know was tired. Officer Ellison stopped by without his cruiser one afternoon, hands in pockets, and told me the restraining order renewal had posted. You did the hard thing, he said, then the right one. Melissa came with peaches and no perfume. We shelled peas on the steps, green snapping between our nails. I'm paying my debts, she said, the sentence shaped like a new muscle. Not with your life. You can stay for dinner, I said. You can't ask for the house. I won't, she said. And we let the porch answer for us, a low hum, an old place deciding we were worth the quiet. Dad wrote in careful ballpoint from rehab, I scrub floors. I think. I sign what I owe. I am learning how to be helped. He didn't ask to come by. He enclosed a receipt with restitution typed small and stubborn. I slid it behind the deed in the binder and felt the sleeves breathe out. Order made its own weather. The Veterans Center called about a Saturday clinic. Inheritance and boundaries for service families. I photocopied Grandma's letter and handed it out without commentary. Paper rustled like a soft wave. A room of tired faces straightened. Stand in a quieter tense. When I said, some debts aren't money, they're healed or left behind. We built folders labeled deed, will, lines, and the printer sang that hopeful, warming hum that office machines make when people are about to fix their lives. Sunday evenings, the porch light went on at dusk. Mom came with store pie and fewer excuses. Melissa set forks with both hands. We ate, argued, laughed, and let the house keep score in mercy, not points. After dishes, I walked the yard's edge and checked the screws on the mailbox for no reason, except discipline is how peace survives. At night, I slept with one letter under my pillow and the window open to porch air. The flag tapped the pole once in a breeze that smelled like rain on slate. When the house clicked and cooled, it sounded like a ship riding gentle water. I liked that. On the morning I took flowers to the cemetery again. The sky was gray and obedient. I pressed my palm to the stone until cold turned into a kind of warmth. I'm done renting my spine to their fear, I said. I'm spending it on this roof, these dinners, the next woman who needs a folder. The wind picked up, just enough to lift the corner of the letter. I tucked it back and stood. On my way home, the porch light was still on, the deed still mine, the bat still retired, the dent still instructive, the flag still precise. The door latch clicked like a sign-off. I let the house breathe and breathed with it. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's freedom. Peace is earned, not inherited. If you've ever had to choose dignity, boundaries, or forgiveness after family betrayal, subscribe for stories about quiet courage, earning peace, and reclaiming home.